So if you have a 70-year-old APOE4 carrier with high education, cognitive activity, well, this person is probably 10 years away from cognitive impairment. However, if you have the exact same 70-year-old with the same genetics but with low education, they are only 2 years away from cognitive impairment. That's an 8-year difference, and today, 6 leading scientists reveal exactly how we can capture those extra years through cognitive reserve, the brain's remarkable ability to maintain function despite accumulating damage. Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Tran. I'm a doctor of pharmacy and an APOE4 carrier and the founder of the Phoenix Community, a platform dedicated to helping APOE4 carriers beat the odds and outsmart Alzheimer's. Through my personal journey with APOE4, I dive deep into the latest research and translate complex findings into clear, actionable insights we can apply today to take control of our health. Today's conference brings 6 breakthrough presentations on cognitive reserve, which is basically our brain's ability to maintain function despite damage. What they discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about genetic destiny, from sex-specific resilience patterns to neighborhood effect on cognition, from hormonal influences to activity combinations that actually work. This session reveals why some of us maintain sharp minds into our 90s while others decline decades earlier. And most importantly, they show us it's not about one magic bullet. It's about understanding which factors matter most for each of us, especially given our unique APOE4 status, which can increase Alzheimer's risk by up to 33x for homozygotes like me. Okay, let's start with what might be the most hopeful finding for us APOE4 carriers. Dr. Roger Dixon from the University of Alberta studied hundreds of us, both heterozygotes and homozygotes, tracking our memory over decades using sophisticated trajectory analysis like growth mixture models. What he found contradicts the doom and gloom narrative we often hear.
They're all across the board. There might be some resilience there to AD genetic risk. APOE4 positive individuals subdivided by sex. This is the results for the females who are APOE4 positive. This is the result for the males. And the 2 top groups are all mildly changing over time, but are generally sustained performance, much different than the bottom group. So we called those groups our dynamic subtype of memory resilience to AD genetic risk.
So think about what this means. We're not all destined for decline. Many of us maintain stable memory performance over time, defying our genetic risk. This dynamic resilience isn't just luck, it's measurable, predictable, and most importantly, achievable. Dixon's team tracked participants from age 55 to 95, providing decades of evidence that APOE4 doesn't guarantee cognitive decline. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When Dixon's team looked at what predicts this resilience, using machine learning classifier models, analyzing 22 different factors, they found something very unexpected.
For females only, these were the main predictors of memory resilience. For both males and females, these were the main predictors of resilience. And for males, there was only one lonely predictor, fewer depressive symptoms. We identified these as gender-related modifiable predictors, these as diversity-related functional health predictors, and these as diversity-related modifiable risk factors.
One lonely predictor for males, fewer depressive symptoms, while females had multiple pathways to resilience, including education, cognitive activities, and social engagements. This is not just academic curiosity. It means we need personalized strategy based on our sex, not one-size-fits-all approach. The biological differences in how male and female brains respond to APOE4 risk are very profound. Dixon didn't stop there. He introduced a revolutionary concept called precision resilience, which is the idea that there isn't just one type of resilience, but multiple forms that vary by person, pathway, and outcome. Some of us might maintain memory through cognitive stimulation, others through physical activity, still others through social connections. The key is finding what works for our unique profile, considering not just our APOE4 status, but our sex, education level, and life circumstances. Right, now let's turn to Dr. Prashanti Vemuri from the Mayo Clinic, who quantified something remarkable about how our life circumstances affect our brain destiny. She studied APOE4 carriers, specifically heterozygotes with one copy, in the population-based Mayo Clinic study of aging, and discovered a stunning disparity.
If you have an 80-year-old individual in your study and who's APOE4 positive at genetic risk of Alzheimer's disease, and one of them is highly educated, has high midlife, late life cognitive activity, but on an average, if you're high SCS, you're about 10 years away from developing cognitive impairment. On the other hand, with someone with low SCS measured by low education occupation, low midlife and late life cognitive activity, and they're 80 years old and they're cognitively normal now, the average age at which they convert to mild cognitive impairment is about 2 years.
8 years difference, not months, not a couple of years, 8 full years of cognitive health. And these were determined largely by education, occupation, and cognitive engagement. For us as APOE4 carriers, it's not just a random statistic, it can be a roadmap. These socioeconomic factors create what scientists call cognitive reserve, essentially extra brain capacity that can compensate for the accelerated damage we face with APOE4. But what's the mechanism? Well, Vemuri's team discovered it comes down to midlife health, particularly cardiometabolic.
We looked at their cardiometabolic health in the 5 years before they got their MRI scan. They were all between 50 to 65 years of age. And who are people who have more money in their bank? So who have great brain health. We found that irrespective of what you have put in the model, the most important thing is how well is someone taking care of their health, their general health status.
So the most important predictor of brain health wasn't a fancy supplement or experimental drug. It was general health status in midlife, blood pressure, glucose levels, cardiovascular health, which are all the basics we can actually control today. For APOE4 carriers, maintaining optimal cardiovascular health is especially critical because we are more vulnerable to vascular damage that compounds our Alzheimer's risk. Vemuri's research also revealed that 50% of people over 85 have significant amyloid in their brains, along with cerebral vascular disease pathologies, yet many remains symptom-free. This heterogeneity in aging show that pathology doesn't equal destiny. Resistance and resilience are possible, even with substantial brain changes. And here is the proof that it works at population level.
Will risk reduction in midlife help? There are very seminal studies that showed that good blood pressure control have really contributed to declining incidence rates of dementia both in Europe and US, and that has been attributed to decreasing prevalence of raised blood pressure.
We are already seeing dementia rates decline in countries with better blood pressure control. It's happening right now. Studies show that controlling hypertension alone can reduce dementia risk by up to 30%, 30. And for us APOE4 carriers who face higher baseline risk, the absolute benefit could be even greater than that. Okay, let's shift to findings now that affect female carriers specifically. Dr. Shireen Sindhi from the Karolinska Institute revealed a sobering statistic from 43 countries worth of data.
2/3 of individuals with dementia are women, and largest increase will indeed be among women. The largest sex differences are seen after the ages of 85 plus or 90 plus. Dementia has been the leading cause of death for women since 2011, and women aged 60 plus are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than breast cancer for the rest of their lifetime.
Twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's as breast cancer. Yet we spend far less time discussing brain health with women than we do mammograms. This disparity becomes even more critical for female APOE4 carriers who face a compounded risk. Dr. Sindhi's meta-analysis from 2023 revealed multiple reproductive factors that affect risk following what scientists call the estrogen hypothesis, which is the theory that estrogen provides neuroprotection by reducing oxidative stress, preventing neuronal death, enhancing synaptic plasticity, and promoting the birth of new neurons.
We need to be cautious here because some of these risk factors only had a handful or fewer of studies. But they have shown that for late menarche, nulliparity, so not having children, grandparity, having 3 plus or 5 plus children, removal of the ovaries, short reproductive period, early menopause, all seem to be increasing the risk for dementia, whereas protective factors were a longer reproductive period and later menopause. And for hormone replacement therapy, the evidence is actually still mixed.
But here's where it gets a little bit more complicated and slightly controversial. Cindy's own study of 1,703 women in the Whitehall 2 cohort found something that contradicts the simple estrogen theory.
We found that bilateral oophorectomy, so removing both ovaries, seemed to actually be protective against memory declines, whereas having a hysterectomy was actually a risk factor for semantic fluency. We need to interpret these with caution because we had a total of 104 dementia cases.
So this paradox highlights how much we still don't understand about women's brain health. The relationship between hormones and cognition is far more complex than more estrogen equals better brain health. Now let's hear from Dr. Gillian Einstein from the University of Toronto, who revealed something crucial for APOE4 carriers.
Ovarian removal also prior to the age of 50, if you carry the APOE4 allele, it increases the odds of late life AD 4 times compared to women in spontaneous menopause. And Bove was lucky enough to get the brains at autopsy of these women. And if the women have had their ovaries removed prior to the age of 38, they have more plaques and they have more tangles than women who went into spontaneous menopause.
4 times the risk. For female APOE4 carriers, whether heterozygotes or homozygotes, early ovarian removal quadruple their Alzheimer's risk. It's not speculation. They're confirming it with autopsy studies showing more plaques and tangles, which are the hallmark proteins of Alzheimer's disease. The interaction between APOE4 and estrogen loss creates a particularly dangerous combination for brain health. Einstein also discovered that women maintain a unique form of resilience that differs fundamentally from men.
In normal, cognitively normal individuals, when you look at A-beta tau ratios, in males, when A-beta tau ratio is greater in males, they actually have poorer memory function. But in females, it doesn't make any difference in the cognitively normals. So we see that females preserve memory in the face of greater A-beta tau ratios.
So women preserve memory despite higher pathology burden, specifically higher amyloid beta and tau protein accumulation. But once diagnosed, these women decline faster. This resilience until breaking point pattern, which Einstein described as the inflection point around the age of menopause, has huge implications for when and how we screen women for cognitive changes. Standard diagnostic tests may miss early decline in women because they leverage verbal memory advantages that mask these underlying pathologies. Now let's examine Dr. Elizabeth Munoz's finding from the University of Texas about how where we live shapes our cognitive destiny. She studied adults from age 28 to 49 in the CATS Life study well before typical cognitive decline and found our neighborhoods matter more than we realized.
The strongest association was between the concurrent address and processing speed. That was the only association that was statistically significant. So greater socioeconomic deprivation was associated with poor speed performance.
All right, processing speed, which is the first cognitive ability to show age-related changes and a sensitive marker of brain health, was already affected by neighborhood deprivation in people in their 30s and 40s. This matters because processing speed decline often precedes memory problems by years or even decades. Neighborhood deprivation limits access to cognitive enriching environment, increase chronic stress, and may increase exposure to environmental toxins. All of those are factors that accelerate brain aging. But here is the hopeful part.
We see that accounting for years of educational attainment reduced the effect of neighborhood deprivation on processing speed by about almost 47%. So the effect was no longer significant after we accounted for educational attainment.
Education cut the negative effect nearly in half. This reinforces what we're seeing across all these studies. Education isn't just about knowledge. It's about building cognitive reserve that protects us decades earlier. Education creates more efficient neural networks, alternative cognitive strategies, and greater brain plasticity that can compensate for damage. So for APOE4 carriers facing accelerated brain aging, this cognitive reserve becomes our insurance policy. This is, by the way, why it's so important to keep your brain's plasticity extremely high. For example, for myself, I'm learning how to code, and that's how I'm building the apps in the Phoenix community, but learning things like musical instruments where it's targeting a lot of different aspects of your brain, right? The reading, the sound, being able to synchronize your movements, your balance, for example. Any of these could be sports or activities that trigger several parts of your brain could help you a lot no matter which age you're in. And learning is extremely important for this cognitive resilience. So going back to the conference, Munoz's team used a sophisticated area deprivation index, examined 7 domains including median household income, education levels, employment, housing stability, and they found that neighborhood level median income was the strongest individual predictor, suggesting that community resources and opportunities matter as much as individual factors. Cool, quick pause here. If you are finding this research valuable for understanding your APOE4 journey, please subscribe to this channel. It's free and you are basically helping us translate this breakthrough science for you every week, helping our community stay ahead of Alzheimer's. Thank you so much. Finally, I want us to look at Dr. Daniel Willie Permore from the University of Pittsburgh, who solved a crucial puzzle about which activity actually protect our brain against specific Alzheimer's pathologies. So his team studied participants from the HAS-CORE brain study, tracking their activity patterns across 5 domains: cognitive, social, physical, leisure, and household activities. Then they measured the resistance to amyloid and tau pathology using PET imaging with specific thresholds. And first, here's what people actually do, measured through the comprehensive CAMS questionnaire.
We see cognitive hours, an average of about 12 hours per week, similarly 10 hours per week for leisure hours, and about 12 hours for social activity hours, about 8 hours for household activity hours, and physical activity at a very wide range from 5 hours to up to 26 hours.
So back to the question, which activity actually predict resilience? Well, the answer surprised everyone and revealed the specificity of protection.
We see tau resilience being predicted by cognitive activities and household or gardening activities, tau resistance being predicted by leisure activities and social engagement, and then amyloid resistance being predicted by leisure activities.
Funny, huh? Different activities protect against different pathologies. Cognitive activities like reading, computer use, playing an instrument, and surprisingly, household and gardening activities predict tau resilience, maintaining cognition despite tau tangles. However, leisure activities like dancing, golf, playing pool, or playing bridge protect against amyloid accumulation. So this specificity means we need a portfolio approach, not just one type of activity, but a strategic combination targeting both major Alzheimer's proteins. The surprise finding about household and gardening activities likely reflect the combination of physical movement, planning, and purposeful engagement, which is a perfect storm for brain health that we've been overlooking for so long. But here's the game changer. When Willie Permore's team combined all activity domains into one predictive model using stepwise regression, and when they compared it to the demographic and clinical variable alone, here's what they found.
For model 1, performance, the area under the curve is 0.65, and model 2, adding the activity domains increases the area under the curve to 0.83, with a significant DeLonghi test of comparison. Similarly, for amyloid resistance, the area under the curve for model 1 is 0.5. The area under the curve for model 2 is 0.82.
So the multi-domain model jumped from 65 to 83% accuracy for tau and from 50 to 82% for amyloid. This dramatic improvement validated by the long test for statistical significance. While this improvement shows it's not about finding one perfect activity, it's about the combination of all your activities. The synergy between different types of engagement creates resilience greater than the sum of its parts, suggesting these activities work through complementary biological pathways. So for all of us APOE4 carriers who face accelerated accumulation of both amyloid and tau, this multi-domain approach becomes critical. We can't afford to focus on just exercise or just cognitive stimulation. You need a whole portfolio working together. So obviously just pick activities that you enjoy doing. It shouldn't be like a chore to try to increase your Alzheimer's resilience. What you want to do is just pick a large myriad of active activities. So active meaning just don't sit in front of Netflix or scroll randomly on your phone. Try to do things that use as much as possible a lot of different brain spaces so you can actually build this brain resilience. All right, to conclude, these 6 presentations have one clear message. We are not prisoners of our genetics. Whether we are heterozygotes with 1 copy or homozygotes with 2 copies, we have multiple pathways to resilience: education, midlife health, strategic activities, hormone awareness for women. And these aren't just, random risk factors. They are really tools that you can apply today, no matter at what age. All right, if you listened until here, the Phoenix community is probably perfect for you. We exist to help APOE4 carriers like you and I navigate these findings and build personalized resilience strategies and personalized protocol. Because as today's science show, knowing our risk is just the beginning. What matters is what we do with that knowledge. All right, stay curious, stay proactive, and remember, our genes load the gun, but our choices pull the trigger. Thank you.